Today is one of the working group members of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Indigenous Foods Network. So how many people have heard of the network before? Oh, great. Oh, that's so nice to see. Okay, so we are a very informal network of people. We don't have any kind of real structure, formal structure. We're really looking into that right now because we're trying to figure out how we can be most sustainable. We've been around for about 7 years, and basically we brought together people that were interested or had any kind of stake within Indigenous foods issues on the island. So it was government, non-government, community, elders, non-profits, non-government agencies, etc., etc. So we felt pretty privileged over the last 7 years learning from various communities all over the island, but we haven't had a whole lot of capacity in terms of our network itself. We have pretty project-based in terms of all of our funding, so that proves a lot of difficulties when you're trying to keep communications going with communities, trying to keep projects going, especially when a lot of that funding has come from the Health Authority, which has been great, or Island Health, which is great, as well as the First Nations Health Authority has really supported the work that we've done over the years. Examples of some of our projects have been the Traditional Foods Conference. I don't know if anyone has ever been able to attend one, but we just finished our 6th annual conference that was held in Cowichan, and as well as the Digital Harvest project that happened that Fiona was a huge part of and is still a huge part of. And we love supporting work such as the Plant Knowledge Cards and the Feasting for Change book as well. So today, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of reversing that food literacy question a little bit. And Sasheen, you amazingly kind of put that quite eloquently earlier. Island Health has food hubs in the island, which I know a lot of people here are part of those food hubs. And they came to VICCIFN and said, hey, would you like to be a hub for the island? And we're like, yeah, we don't know about that. So we went back to the working group and said, like, what does everybody think? And we said, well, we need to go back to the community. We can't answer that question. We need to ask that question of the community. Thankfully, Island Health had given us some funding in order to do that project. So we took a year and it was called Sharing Our Voices. And we had 6 gatherings. We were able to do 6 gatherings, plus one at the Traditional Foods Conference that was in Port Alberni last fall. And basically, my slideshow didn't come through, but that's okay. We ended up with a 25-page report that has a lot of photos, really different from any kind of typical report, but please ask me if you'd like a copy, or I can send you a copy, or take a look at this one. But we basically we tried to piggyback on events that were happening already in communities, and then kind of help out, and I see a lot of people here today that also helped out with our regional gatherings, such as Cynthia in Campbell River, Lucy up in Rowsell. Sasheen, I think you may have helped with the House It.
We helped in Victoria with the Traditional Food Conference.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So we've just had a lot of good partnerships within communities, and they all look really different. So all the gatherings had their own flair to them. In Rowsell, we did a bit of a community garden raising, building day, and then had a lunch, dinner with the elders. In Campbell River, we did a bannock bake-off because that's what the community wanted to have, and so that was really interesting. We had a lot of elders that came out, and then we asked a lot of questions at the gathering. So some of the questions that we asked were like, what's the importance of Indigenous traditional foods? What are your barriers and challenges to accessing your traditional foods? Are youth connected to traditional foods practices within your community? If there was a hub, a food security hub, what could that look like and how could that support your community? Do you know about VICCIFN? And have you been to any of our events? And have those been useful or helpful? Or how could you see us supporting our community? So we had a lot of questions. We got a lot of diagrams out of it. There's one that I would love if I had. But if you could come up after and look at it.
Next slide. Down.
Oh.
It's actually on there.
Oh, this is us. This one. So we kind of put cards out and asked people, like, what does your food network look like? And this was my favorite answer that we got from all of the gatherings, because at first it was an elder in Campbell River, and we had just had all of the, he had all of the pictorials, and then a youth actually came along and kind of helped him with kind of what the names were in the English language, because he knew all of the traditional names for all of the traditional seafoods. So that was a really great kind of cross-cultural experience. And we had a lot of elders that helped with this project that we'd like to thank, of course. But I guess after hearing everyone today, what VICCIFN really wants to do and what we, I think, strive to do and why this project actually came about was that there isn't always food literacy programs that are going into community. It's not about that. That's not what we really strive to do. There's so much knowledge within the communities that isn't acknowledged. That's what we really, and Sasheen had mentioned this earlier too, there's a lot of traditional foods on the islands, but creating those connections between youth and elders, it's not our job to bring the knowledge in, but it is our job to try to facilitate events where that knowledge exchange can happen. So, and that's why we wrote this report, was to bring that back to Island Health and say, like, this is what's happening on the island, and we don't really feel like it's maybe part of the bigger food security picture that's happening within the island, but as well within the health authority. So we were trying to bring that kind of issue up and then just look at what that could look like. So the next steps, we had some recommendations from the community for VIHA at the time, Island Health, in terms of what communities wanted and what they could see could support them in terms of food security within their communities. And it's so broad. I mean, even this project itself, we were only able to do 6 communities. We tried to kind of do like remote and rural and urban, tried to get a bit of a mix, but it's still only 6 out of the 52 communities on the island. We were hoping to gather a little bit more information at the conference because we usually have people from all over the island at the conference, but it's still just a snapshot of what's happening on the island within First Nations communities. So some of the recommendations that came out were like, okay, well, we don't know if we could be a hub because we would like to see more coordination happening with the existing hubs. Like what's happening already, we feel like we're out of that conversation. We're not really part of that conversation. How could we make some bridges into that conversation where we could share resources and share programs that, so we're actually at the table. So that was one of the recommendations that came back. Another recommendation that came back was the need for more regional gatherings, so kind of supporting what's already happening, but just more within communities to see more of that knowledge exchange happening. Instead of programs being brought into community, just instead of that, for there to be like that, just that sparking and just that opportunity to share knowledge. So I guess that's what we wanted to bring today, just that acknowledgement of what's already there. And there's such a vast capacity within the communities, and that's why I have issues even with the word like capacity building programs, especially within First Nations communities, because there's a vast amount that exists. And so it's just kind of seeing that opportunity. So if you have any questions, I'm here all day. I'd love to answer any questions about the network, if you'd like to get involved, or if you'd like to see the report, hear about the conference, or Fiona and Jen are also here, who are part of the